When life gets tough and challenges seem endless, what really leads to success? Is it the gift of natural talent, the consistent grind of hard work, or the everyday struggles and failures that quietly shape regular people into stronger, smarter, and more resilient versions of themselves? Over time, the eviction notice was taped to our apartment door when I came home from my third job interview rejection that week. I stood there at 19, holding my baby sister's hand, reading the legal document that gave us 7 days to find somewhere else to live. Mom was inside, probably passed out on the couch again, lost in another bottle of whatever was cheapest at the corner store. "What's that paper, Rosa?" little Carmen asked, tugging on my sleeve. "It means we need to find a new home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady while my world crumbled around me. My high school classmate Brittany lived 3 blocks away in the house her investment banker father had bought her for graduation. Brittany was everything I wasn't. Naturally charismatic, effortlessly confident, destined for success. She'd gotten into USC with a full scholarship while I couldn't even afford community college application fees. That night I walked to Brittany's house and found her packing designer clothes for her freshman year. "Rosa, what brings you here?" she said, not bothering to hide her surprise that someone from my side of town was at her door. I told her about the eviction, about Mom's drinking, about not being able to find even minimum wage work. Brittany shook her head sympathetically. "That's terrible. But honestly, Rosa, at least you don't have the pressure I have. My parents expect me to maintain a 4.0 at USC and eventually get into investment banking. You get to figure life out without all these expectations." I stared at her, realizing she genuinely thought my problems were easier than her privileged pressures. "Right," I said quietly. "Lucky me." Walking home, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to let circumstances define my future. The next morning, I started what I called Operation Survival. If talent and connections weren't available to me, I'd have to build something else entirely. I walked into every business within walking distance: restaurants, grocery stores, laundromats, gas stations, and asked for work. Not just submitted online applications, but looked managers in the eye and asked for opportunity. At Rivera's Market, the owner, Mr. Rivera, looked at my application skeptically. "You don't have retail experience," he noted. "No, sir, but I've been managing my family's household since I was 14. I know how to budget, organize, work with difficult people, and solve problems when there's no obvious solution." Something in my desperation must have resonated, because Mr. Rivera hired me for $9 an hour, working evenings and weekends. For the next year, I learned everything about running a small business. Not because I was naturally gifted at retail, but because every skill I acquired meant more job security and potentially more responsibility. Mr. Rivera started noticing my dedication. "Rosa, most teenagers I hire want easy tasks and regular schedules. You're asking me to teach you inventory management and customer service techniques, because someday I might need to know those things," I said. What I didn't tell Mr. Rivera was that every night I went home and researched business operations online using the library's free internet. I studied marketing strategies, learned about customer psychology, and read about successful entrepreneurs who'd started with nothing. Meanwhile, Brittany was posting Instagram photos from USC parties and spring break trips. Her life looked effortless and perfect. By winter, I was earning $12 an hour and had convinced Mr. Rivera to let me help with ordering and scheduling. Between work and watching Carmen while Mom was drinking, I was learning skills that would serve me for decades, but everything was still precarious. One missed rent payment, one family crisis, one moment of bad luck could destroy the fragile stability I'd built. The breakthrough came when Mrs. Patterson, a regular customer, noticed how I handled a difficult situation with a supplier who'd delivered the wrong products. "Rosa, you solved that problem better than most business owners I know," she said. "Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" I almost laughed. "Mrs. Patterson, I can barely afford groceries. How would I start a business? The same way you've done everything else. One step at a time, learning as you go." She told me about her son who'd started a house cleaning service with nothing but determination and quality work. "Success isn't about having money to begin with," she said. "It's about creating value for people and solving problems they actually have." That conversation planted a seed that grew over the following month. I started observing the businesses in our neighborhood, noticing problems that weren't being solved. Many working families needed grocery delivery, but couldn't afford the expensive services that served wealthy areas. Senior citizens wanted help with shopping, but had limited options. Using my employee discount at Rivera's Market and my growing knowledge of the neighborhood's needs, I started an informal grocery delivery service for elderly customers and working parents. It began with 5 customers who paid me $5 extra to deliver their groceries after my regular shifts. Within 3 months, I had 20 regular customers and was earning an extra $300 a week. Mr. Rivera was initially concerned I was competing with his door, but I showed him how my service was actually bringing in new customers and increasing sales. "Rosa, you've created something that benefits everyone," he said. "Your customers get convenience, I get more sales, and you get income." That's real business thinking. The success attracted attention from other small business owners in the neighborhood who wanted to partner with my delivery service. The local bakery asked me to deliver their products. The pharmacy wanted me to offer prescription delivery. By my second year, I was running a small delivery cooperative serving 3 neighborhoods and employing 4 other young people who'd been struggling to find work. But the real test came when the economy crashed and many of my customers lost jobs or had their hours reduced. Instead of cutting service, service, I adapted. I negotiated with suppliers for bulk discount, created payment plans for customers facing temporary hardship, and found ways to reduce costs while maintaining quality. Rosa, how are you still growing when other businesses are closing? Asked Janet, who owned the corner laundromat. Because I learned how to make things work when they're not supposed to work, I explained. This whole business was built on solving problems for people who didn't have a lot of options. Economic tough times are just another problem to solve. While businesses that had relied on easy circumstances struggled to adapt, my experience with constant challenge had prepared me for exactly this kind of environment. 3 years after the eviction notice, I had a team of 12 employees, partnerships with 15 local businesses, and enough saved to move Carmen and me into a stable apartment while getting Mom into a treatment program. But the recognition that changed everything came when I was invited to speak at the Small Business Development Center about entrepreneurship in underserved communities. Most people think you need capital or connections to start a business, I told the audience of aspiring entrepreneurs. What I learned is that you need something more valuable, the ability to solve real problems for real people, especially when resources are limited. I shared how growing up with constant financial pressure had taught me to be resourceful, how managing family crises had developed my problem-solving skills, and how being told I wasn't college material had motivated me to prove that there were multiple paths to success. The struggles that felt like obstacles were actually training for exactly the kind of work I ended up doing, I said. After my presentation, Dr. Patricia Williams, a business professor from the local university, approached me. Rosa, what you've built demonstrates principles that we teach in graduate business programs. Have you considered pursuing formal education to complement your real-world experience? I can't afford college, I said automatically. There are scholarships specifically for entrepreneurs who've demonstrated success despite facing significant barriers, she explained. Your story isn't just inspiring, it's academically significant. 6 months later, I was enrolled in the university's evening business program with a full scholarship, studying theories that explained what I'd learned through practice. But what amazed my professors wasn't my natural academic ability. I struggled with many conventional classroom approaches. What impressed them was how I could translate abstract concepts into practical applications and identify solutions that textbook theories miss. Rosa brings something to our discussions that traditional students often lack, Professor Martinez told the class. She understands business from the ground up, from the perspective of people who can't afford mistakes. My final project analyzed how small businesses in low-income communities could build sustainable competitive advantages through community partnerships and adaptive service models. The research became the foundation for my consulting firm, which helps neighborhood businesses develop strategies for thriving in challenging economic environments. Today, 10 years after that eviction notice, I run a consulting practice that works with over 100 small businesses across 4 states. My delivery cooperative has evolved into a local food cooperative that provides affordable, healthy options while supporting neighborhood businesses. Carmen is in high school now, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time at the cooperative, learning the same business fundamentals that once felt impossible for me to access. Mom completed treatment and works as a peer counselor, helping other families navigate addiction recovery. She often says that watching me refuse to give up gave her the courage to get sober. But the insight that drives everything I do came from those early years of struggle. Sustainable success isn't about having advantages that make business easy. It's about developing capabilities that make you effective when business gets hard. Brittany and I reconnected recently when she hired my firm to help her father's investment company develop strategies for working with small business clients. Rosa, I have to tell you something, she said during our first strategy meeting. I always thought I was the lucky one because everything came easily to me. But watching what you've built, I realize you got the better education. How so? You learned how to create value when resources are scarce, how to solve problems without obvious solutions, how to build relationships with people who don't have power. When I entered the business world, I had credentials but no real capabilities. You had capabilities that credentials can't teach. She paused, looking around my office at the photos of successful small businesses we'd helped grow. I succeeded in college because of natural advantages, but I'm succeeding in business because I learned to work with people like you, people who understand how to make things work when they shouldn't. When young entrepreneurs from difficult backgrounds ask me about building successful businesses, I share what 15 years taught me. Natural talent opens doors and creates early opportunities. Hard work builds competence and sustains long-term growth. But the everyday struggles and failures that quietly shape regular people into stronger, smarter, and more resilient versions of themselves, those experiences develop the most valuable entrepreneurial capability. The customers who taught me about real need, the suppliers who pushed me to be resourceful, the economic pressures that forced me to innovate, all of it was preparation for work I couldn't have imagined when I was reading that eviction notice. The struggles that seemed like evidence of my disadvantages became the experiences that qualified me for my life's work. Every problem I couldn't avoid taught me something about solutions I could create. Carmen recently told me she wants to study business and social work because she wants to help families like ours were. Rosa, you showed me that having problems doesn't make you a problem. It makes you someone who understands problems and can help solve them. Today, when I drive past the apartment moment where we received that eviction notice, I think about the girl who thought her life was falling apart. She couldn't have known that her struggles were actually building the foundation for everything meaningful she would accomplish. The eviction that felt like failure was actually redirection toward work that creates value for people facing the same challenges I once faced. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually the first moments of our real education beginning. The validation of this philosophy came when I received a call that would expand my understanding of how struggle creates capability on a larger scale. Ms. Martinez, this is Dr. Jennifer Chen from the Department of Small Business Development. We'd like you to lead a national pilot program for supporting small businesses in economically distressed communities. The 18-month study took me to 20 cities, working with entrepreneurs who reminded me of my 19-year-old self, determined but operating where traditional business advice didn't apply. In Detroit, Marcus Johnson had started a home repair service after losing his factory job. His challenge wasn't lack of skills, but customers who needed services but couldn't pay standard rates up front. Working with Marcus, we developed flexible payment plans and partnerships with local organizations. Within 6 months, he had a waiting list and had hired 2 assistants. In Phoenix, Maria Santos struggled with her home-based catering business, told she needed a commercial kitchen to be legitimate. Instead, we turned her constraints into advantages. Her home operation allowed personalized service and lower overhead. Her community knowledge became her unique selling proposition, specializing in authentic family-style meals. These experiences revealed that entrepreneurs from challenging backgrounds often possessed exactly the capabilities needed for sustainable businesses in challenging environments. The Adaptive Entrepreneurship Initiative launched in 50 communities nationwide, showing 40% higher survival rates than traditional programs. Carmen's success in college validated this approach. Her freshman economics professor assigned a case study about small business failures in low-income communities. While classmates discussed theory, Carmen proposed practical solutions based on neighborhood observation. These businesses aren't failing because they don't understand economics, Carmen told her class. They're failing because economic theories assume conditions that don't exist in their markets. Her analysis won the university's Outstanding Undergraduate Research Award. Harvard Business School invited me to lecture on entrepreneurship under constraint. How many have started a business with less than $500? I asked 80 MBA students. One hand went up. The most creative solutions often come from people who can't afford conventional approaches, I explained, sharing stories of innovation born from limitation. Professor Kim proposed creating a joint program pairing MBA students with community entrepreneurs. The program pairs analytical skills with practical knowledge, teaching both groups more than traditional education. Jennifer Walsh, an MBA student, worked with Carlos Rivera, who'd built a landscaping business despite limited formal education. Carlos taught me to read customers' real needs, not just what they say, Jennifer said. Carlos learned strategic planning that helped him expand from 1 person to 12 employees. The Harvard partnership expanded to 15 universities, bridging academic theory with entrepreneurial reality. But the moment that brought everything full circle came last month, when I received a letter from Brittany, my former classmate who'd once thought my struggles were easier than her privileges. Rosa, she wrote, I wanted you to know that I've left investment banking to start a nonprofit that provides microloans to women entrepreneurs in low-income communities. Working with your consulting firm taught me that the most important business skills can't be learned in classrooms. They have to be earned through experience. You showed me that struggle isn't something successful people overcome and forget. It's something successful people transform into wisdom that helps others succeed. Reading her letter, I thought about the 19-year-old girl who stood outside her apartment reading an eviction notice, convinced her life was falling apart. That girl couldn't have imagined that her struggles would become her qualification, that her problems would become her purpose, that her worst moments would become the foundation for her most meaningful work. The eviction notice that felt like failure was actually the beginning of an education that no university could have provided, an education in resilience, resourcefulness, and the deep understanding that comes from building success without advantages.